Hi there, I'm RonLees, sat here on the banks of the River Severn at Holt Fleet. I've been here, I would think, a couple of hours now. Lovely, gorgeous August day. I think I might have £2 of roach in the net. Nothing huge, maybe fish to about 12 ounces, but it is the species that I'm looking after today. And I think that if the river continues to look as it's looking now, it's carrying a little bit of extra colour due to the heavy rainfall last night, maybe a couple of inches over normal summer level. Perfect roach conditions. It's a lovely place, Holt Fleet, I think. I think it carries most species at the River Severn, carries along its length from the barbel, which are more predominant upstream, down to the bigger bream shells, which are more predominant down below Gloucester, down towards Tewkesbury. Roach are a species at Holt Fleet that is largely ignored. Mainly, I think, because anglers come up here and they chuck the swim feeder out looking for barbel, which is a fine fish. It's a nice method to do if you want to catch barbel. But all right down the banks here, this is a gravel part of the river. These are the roach beds. Nice big fish, a lot of them I don't think I've seen a hook before. My love for Holt Fleet, it goes back many years from when my father used to bring me on the bus from Birmingham. He used to cross the bridge, half a mile upstream there. Used to get off, walk down the river, watch some of the real old anglers. And it was there, incidentally, that I seen a bloke fishing meat for the first time, but more of that, another story for another day, that I think. Today, as I say, I'll be fishing for roach. Some big fish to £1.5, are not unusual. Fish to £1, of course, are more common. And I must relate a little story while I'm talking about this. 5 years ago, when my lad Jake was 13, I started to teach him how to roach fish, and we use hemp and tears, pegged just a few yards upstream up there. I fished for 2 hours with hemp and tears, never had a bite. Then sod's law, I give the lad the rod, showed him to hold it, showed him how to cast, how to control the throat properly. He did, and he had 10 fish for £13. All great big prime roach. I'd never seen a hook. Wonderful lesson. I learnt a lot that day just watching the lad myself. It's got a little bit of history, in as much it was mentioned in the Domesday Book when King John at the time related the fact that Umbersley, little village 3 miles up the hill there, lived on the proceeds that they gleaned from the river in the shape of eels, and they took on an average of 2,000 eels a year. How on earth that supplied a village with all its needs, I don't know, but it is a historical fact. Well, enough of me, enough of the river, enough of King John. Let's have a look at the tackle now that I'm going to use for roach fishing. Right, we're looking at a stick float rig first, which I'm holding here in my hands. But later on during the day, I will be going on to straight lead, but I'll describe that obviously when I come to it. First of all, the rod. This is an old Bruce & Walker 13-foot match rod. It's got a built-in tip. There we are there, which takes up a nice little bit of a bounce when I'm striking into big fish. Sort of a little shock absorber, which is essential when you're roach fishing, because big barbel and big chub, incidentally, are liable to come into the swim, which is a nice bonus when you're catching roach, I suppose. It's an old rod, I would think. It's got to be between 12 and 15 years old. I don't wish to purchase any other rod because this lovely old rod suits me as a person, probably because I'm old myself. The extension of my arm, got a little grot round the butt, but I think it all adds to the character of it. As I say, it's 13 foot, the ideal rod that most anglers use for float fishing these days. Certainly long enough to get to the 2 or 3 rod length out mark that we need, whereas a 12-foot rod, of course, would be that little bit too stiff, possibly a bit too short as the roach move in and out. I can chase them around with this particular rod. The reel, this is an Abu 501. I've had this one quite a long time ago, and it's been repaired once or twice, but it's a reel which I've got a great affection for. I prefer it to the 506 myself, in as much as it's got a adjustable back wind in the form of that button there. Taking it anti-clockwise, it loosens the tension where the fish can take line easier. Tightening it up, of course, it makes it harder for the fish to take line. So it's a nice variable adjustment. Nice little old reel, I'm very fond of it. The line I'm using today is, the real line anyway, is Bayer 1.7. I think it's the ideal lightness and diameter of line which complements this reel and this rod to give a nice balanced setup, which of course is essential in any form of stick float fishing. Now we'll come to the stick float itself. This particular one, it's a John Sherwood 4 No. 4. It could have been anybody's name, Joe Bloggs, Fred Smith, Max Winters, John Dean. A lot of anglers have put the name to these floats, but this particular one by John, I think he's got something different. What it is I don't know, but this particular size in the John Sherwood range of floats, it's a wonderful balance. It's to do with the cane and it's to do with the balsa of which this particular float is made of. And the balance on this one, and it's a standard incidentally, a lot of floats, you buy these different types and sizes of stick floats and they vary tremendously. But the John Sherwood range is nicely balanced. You can get a 4 number 4 which takes near as damn it 4 number 4 to set it fairly right. Of course, you do not put 4 number 4 onto the line directly. It's broken down. In this particular instance, I've got 2 under the float there, 2 shot there. That is to give me the distance of the surface to the bed of the river, i.e. of course the depth of the river. That's my little telltale. So I can move that float up and down, chasing the fish in and out as they go into slightly deeper water. But my particular 0.2 rods out, from those 2 shot down to the hook, is the depth. I've taken the shots, broke them down a little bit. There I've got 3 number 8s. There are 2 more number 8s, one slipped slightly. Balanced down to 1 number 8 and 3 number 10s, all tightened up there because I've been fishing with hemp and tears, and occasionally these roach do take the shot, mistaking them for hemp when you get these little sharp type of bites and you hit them and all you're doing is striking at fresh air in reality. The hook length, which is just stuck in my trousers for the umpteenth time, hook length is 1.1. It's the weak link in the chain, a very essential factor when doing any form of float fishing. If I hook a big fish or I hook the bottom where I can't free the hook, that will break, and all I'll do is 2 or 3 inches of 1.1 bayer line, which ain't going to break the bank, and 1 hook. So it's a simple matter of putting another hook and a hook length on. Whereas if that hook was straight up to the reel, in actual fact continuing to the reel line, then the line might break anywhere. It could break on any other shot, where the float is, one of the 2, I might have 1 or 2 bad rings, I don't know, or back to the reel itself, which creates a lot of problems. The hook, this is a size 14. Not the best roach hook, one would think. In actual fact, it could be called an anchor for roach fishing. But with tears, roach don't seem to mind, with sense attached to it, of course, what size of hook we use. And they'll take that quite confidently, stuck in just the loose skin of a tear. With caster fishing and maggot fishing, obviously I would not use a 14 hook. I'd go down to 18s, 20s, even 22 in the cold days of winter when the fish are very, very finicky. I think that just about explains the tackle in general. Well balanced tackle, I like it. Now I shall start talking about the bait. Right, first of all I shall mention casters. Surely the greatest universal bait for most fish anywhere. Certainly for roach, they love them. I think it's fair to say that roach prefer a dark caster. I'll just pick 2 out of the tin here. An extremely dark one, an extremely light one. They do prefer the dark caster. I think it's got a lot to do with the balance of the caster to the weight of the hook, because the darker caster carries a little bit more air as the fly is developing inside. Therefore, it's just that little tiny bit more buoyant than the lighter type of caster, which sinks pretty quickly in comparison. So what I'm trying to say really is a dark caster does, to some extent, overcome the weight of the hook. You will note that these are sunk in water because during the day, the casters being still in a live form, they will turn into the fly form gradually, of course, but they become floaters. And unless we sink them in water, we start throwing them in for loose feed, and they do float on the surface of the river, which can be a good ploy. It's a tactic that we do use occasionally, but not in this case. I'm trying to catch fish under the surface, not on top of it. Casters, they can be prepared by the individual angler, but to get enough for a day's fishing, shall we say on a Saturday, you have to buy a gallon advanced form a week before, and that to be riddled every 4 hours, every day, through the night, early morning before you go to work. When you come back for the drink, you spill them all over the floor in the kitchen. The missus would bar me. You've got a divorce on your hand. So the simple answer is buy the casters from the tackle dealer who'll prepare them in excellent form with no muck or rubbish in them. It's a lot easier. Little tiny bit more expensive, but definitely worth that extra expense. Coloured maggots are invariably used for casters by the tackle dealers. The fish don't mind, because if the caster's brown, they're not colour blind. They don't bother whether they're yellow, red, white maggot to the initial stage. So if you do buy the casters from the tackle dealer and you happen to prick one and red comes out, nothing at all to worry about, perfectly natural. So much for the casters for the time being. Just put those down there a moment. Now I shall look at what I've been using today so far. which is hempen tears. I say hempen tears, they're both seed baits, but they go together like chalk and cheese, like Bill and Ben, like Smith and Brown, and like RonLees and Holt Fleet. One is not much good without the other. Seed in itself is probably better used at this time of the year, August, September. My rule of thumb is when the farmers start mowing the hay up and getting all the corn in, that's the time to use hempen tears. Why, I don't know, of course I'm not a fish, but it just seems to be the time when it's more productive than any other time of the year, I should say. Just put the tears down a moment. The hemp, this is bought dry from the tackle dealer. You can buy it cooked, but it's a lot better to buy it dry in its neat form, because by virtue of the fact that it's better to soak it in cold water for 2 days, it swells. So if you buy a pint, prepare it accordingly, as I'm about to describe. It doubles its size, so a pint in effect becomes 2 pints. Whereas if you buy your own pint from the tackle dealer, you're stuck with a pint. So you can double your chances of it, if you like, as regards expense. If you look at it closely, you will see that this hemp seed has got little white things sticking out of it. That's the kernel of the seed. And it's brought into that state by, as I've said, 2 days soaking in cold water, and then put it on the boil with plenty of water, because these seeds do soak up quite a lot of water when they're boiling, as they double the size, of course. And eventually, 1 or 2 little bits of pieces of white will start poking out of the kernel. When the vast majority are in that little poking out white stage, that's the time to get it off the boil, get all the hot water out, and soak it in cold water, cool them down immediately, pack them in a fairly airtight container, chuck them in the fridge to await your day's fishing. Nice bait. I would advise at this stage not to chuck them in the corner of the garden when you're finished with them, because they do grow into a weed which the policemen are slightly suspicious of. I'm going to say no more on that subject, but I shall leave hemp seed as it is there for the time being. Now to the tears, the sister part of the hemp seed. This is a hook bait. Tears, when bought, are like little bullets, very, very hard. You can't hit them with an hammer, really. You can hit them with a hammer, but you don't do no good, except you hurt your wrist. They have to be soaked for quite a long time. My preference is I put them in a jug, fill the jug up with cold water, put them in the fridge, and it's noticeable how much these tears do swell. After 2 or 3 days there, I get it out, put it in the pot, and I boil it. And I watch those tears like a little newborn baby, because they can be at the good stage and the crap stage in a matter of 5 minutes. You've got to catch them just right. It's best to pick one up just occasionally, give it a little squeeze. That one's perfect. Then another one. That one just a little bit hard, but I've still managed to squeeze it. And another one there. Now that one's solid. I can't squeeze that one, so that's a bad one. Your hook wouldn't even penetrate that one. A fish would still take it, of course, but it's no good if you can't get it on the hook. So it's 2 out of 3. I've just about squeezed that one now. 2 out of 3 is not a bad average, but I like to squeeze 10, even 20 of the tears when in the boiled form, to say to myself, right, as a whole, they're right for fishing as I want them. So that's hempen tears. Okay, now we come to the Rolls Royce of roach bait, common old white bread. It's fair to say the big roach prefer this bait to any other bait in all its forms. I will be using pinched bread flake on a number 14 hook, which is my personal preference, but other anglers do like to use it in bread punch form, which is no more than a hollow round barrel which is pressed into the bread, comes out, goes on the hook. Me, I just prefer a little squeeze like that, leaving a little parachute, which I'll put on the hook very shortly as a better demonstration. I think roach preferred it also, because little bits do tend to break off, making a natural ground bait. It is used in other forms, of course, such as in bread paste form, but I think it's just a personal preference with myself that I prefer to use it in flake form. Incidentally, I've had my biggest roach ever that I caught on bread flake on a size 14 hook down at Ripple, a few miles down the river, albeit in winter. But a roach is a roach, and although it is classed more of a winter fish, they certainly are catchable on bread flake during the summer months. And I hope to catch bigger ones than I've got in there on bread flake later on today. Okay, I've spoken about the river, I've spoken about the species, I've gone through the tackle in detail and the baits. Now let's catch some fish. Okay, I'm going to continue with tears, the bait that I've been fishing so far today, with some success I may add. Nothing complicated with putting a tear on a hook. It's quite a big hook, so I should have no trouble putting it on. Lightly prick it, hang it up, there we are, nothing complicated. Gentle swing into the river, laying the float on the river with the float in the upstream position, and the bait drops naturally through the water, hopefully down to the fish. A few sprinkle, couple of dozen grains of hemp behind the float. Incidentally, it's not too wise to put too many tears in. 2 or 3 every 5 minutes is ample. And I've got a fish on the first chuck, how about that? Not a big fish, I don't think. Oh, it's nice enough. It's a nice little roach, lovely little roach, not a scale out of place. Beautiful fish, I love them. Gently into the net. And off we go again, and this generally fishing is tears. Another little cast into the swim. A few more grains of hemp. And the big boat comes past and the float starts to go upstream. Problem with the dredgers on the Severn, that one's going to dump its load further down. They do sweep the bait out of the original baited area and they push it right into the centre, pull it into the centre I should say. Unfortunately they don't wash it back. I've just got 2 wellies full of water, but it's not too bad really, quite warm today the river. Now all that hemp's gone, so I'm going to put a couple of decent handfuls in now to get the roach back into the area. A couple of quite good handfuls there. And maybe half a dozen grains of tears for that one now. Now I've just seen 2 or 3 flashes, 2 or 3 inches under the surface. That's roach. They were too big for bleak. That's roach rising to the bait, which probably means that I've put too much hemp in. I think it's fair to say at this stage that the feeding pattern for any fish, but specifically for roach, has got to be right, because if you put too much in, you'll blow them out, overfeed them and they'll disappear. If you don't put enough in, they won't stay. So it's a matter of judgment just to attain that correct balance of feed to fish ratio. It's a terrible problem with roach when they do rise to the bait, when you're throwing hemp in. If that does happen, it's just a matter of leaning back on the hemp, putting enough in to keep them interested of course, with maybe 2 or 3 tears more than you normally would. I think I had just a little touch here, and yes I did. It's taken the tear. It's ever so nice, this hemp and tear fishing. I love it, dead simple, no messing about with ground bait and things like that. Again, lay it on the surface, float upstream, baiting a line downstream, taking the loose line, click the bail pin off, and away we go once again. I've not put in no hemp in that particular cast for the very good reason, like I said, the fish were rising to the loose feed. When they're really coming on this hemp and tears, as they were early this morning, you can go one a chuck, a bite a chuck that is. I'm not going to say a fish a chuck, because it's normal to miss a lot of bites when you're doing this type of fishing. So if that does happen to you, don't worry about it, it happens to all of us. I think you're looking at about 1 in 4, something like a connection. You're not doing too badly at all. There we are, the bite, the fish are back. That was a nice bite, that was, that I missed. So a few more grains of hemp this time. I like to throw my hemp in before I cast, because with the fish rising to the bait problem, it gives them time to follow it down to the bottom, by which time I've cast and hopefully my hook bait will get there round about the same time as they do, which I like to think results in a few extra fish during the course of the day. Although the wind's died now, that back shot I think is still proving a great benefit. It's allowing me to control the float down the river. In fact, I could write my name in the middle of the river with that float now. It's a beautiful control situation. Oh, nice bite. That buried itself a foot, that one did. This is not a bad fish, not a bad fish. Not a giant, but not a bad fish at all. Very gently, like most roach, that one's kited to the top. They do tend to do that, these River Severn roach. I suppose it's true of roach everywhere. Not a big fish. It's a nice clean looking one now. Oh, it's a little bream, little hybrid actually. It's one of those roach bream hybrid. I didn't think it fought so well, but he still had the tendency to rise to the top as these roach do. It's got a few scales out. It's not the best conditioned hybrid I've seen. I think that's just a little habit that these species have. Still not a bad little fish. Wouldn't mind a few pound of those in the course of a match. Back in the keep net. And another tear. Cast. 2 or 3 around the float. Settled down lovely this river has now, like a sheet of glass. I think it's round about this time of the day, mate, that I start falling in love with it all over again. Oh, another nice bite, missed one. Slipping. Now that one, see what's happened to them? That's taken the meat of the tear, shall we say, the kernel outside, and just left the husk of it on. I don't know how roach do that, but they do it, and they're very, very clever at it. And I wish I knew, because I might be able to find an answer to it. So, I'll get another one, see what happens. The position I'm looking for these roach at the moment is on what I call the crease line. It's where the river tends to speed up. It's away from the slowness of the edge, not into the direct speed of the main current, but a little adjustment between the two. And I like to think that that's where the roach live. It's a natural home. They like that little bit of a flow in the river, but they don't like to fight the hard current. And that's a nice fish. That's a lovely fish, that one here. Oh, slow down a little bit. Still, not quite so big as I thought. It was dashing around like a maniac. There we are, folks. That's the funniest roach you've ever seen in your life, in the shape of a 1 ounce gudgeon. Not the prettiest of fish, certainly not the biggest of fish, but I'd hate to walk a gudgeon at 10 pound. Whoops, come here, my sunshine. With the conservation in mind these days, I do use barbless hooks. It's a fact that I've not mentioned. It's a failure of mine that I don't mention, that I should mention it more often. Keeping it with Mr. Gudgeon. You will have noticed I've slowed down on the hemp seed. The reason for that is the roach are rising to the bait far too much. I'm still putting a little bit in just occasionally, but it does seem to be one of those days when I think they're going to respond to loose-fed tears sooner than they will handfuls of hemp. Oh, that's a better fish. That is a better fish. It's wise to take every precaution you can with these fish, because you're fishing with light tackle to give them a little bit of a chance, because it is after all a sport. It's a matter of gaining roach. I think I'll chuck an hand grenade in and blow a few dozen out. Yeah, they're not fighting so well in this type of weather, I don't think, as they do in the winter. Oh, now he's coming. Oh, that's a nice clean looking fish. Net under the fish, of course, all times when you're using the landing net with any type of fish. There we are. Not a bad little roach. Nice and slimy to the touch. Nice fish, that one. Quite pleased with that. I also find with tears that towards the end of the day, because they're wet, they do start to deteriorate. Magnificent cast there, tangled around the top of the rod now down. Here we are, lay down, little bit of amp now, a few grains of 4. Come on then, my son, down you go. I was about to say the boat traffic is slowing down a bit, but we got one approaching us now. Not a big one, I don't think. It's making these tiny bites a little bit more difficult to detect. No, it's come off the line. Come on then. I think the pace of this river's picked up a little bit. I think if it continues to pick up, I shall have to change my float. Yeah, I'm going to put a slightly heavier float on now. Another little tear. Give them a couple more, keep these roach interested. A little bit finicky at the moment. I think that's a result of the boat traffic, to be quite honest. Hard to put together. But I don't think they've gone anywhere. Got him, nice fish. Not a bad fish this, don't know how big, I would think possibly 6 ounces. Certainly ain't a gudgeon, if it was it'd be a record. Not fighting all that well. That's bite, it's showing a little bit of sparkle now, yeah. I'm playing these fish very, very carefully. I've lost 1 or 2 during the course of the day, the hook just falling out of the mouth. Yeah, not a bad fish. Bottom of it's a little bit red, that's the result of the hemp on the bottom. Nice fish that one, quite pleased with it. Beautiful coloured fins I think these roach. They really are gorgeous to look at. Nice fish that one, I would think it was about 10 or 12 ounces. Certainly made the rod bend a little bit. Talking about big roach, I've never even seen anything approaching the record, which is £4 and a bit. I think £4.4, £4.6 or something like that. Caught by a fella called Richard Jones. The way some of these Severn roach fight, I would think a fish of £4.4, a river fish of £4.4, would really put an horseshoe into the rod. I don't know whether that record will be broken in actual fact. I think that personal opinions, when the weight of a roach is over the £4 mark, I think it's getting old and it's going to snuff it rather quickly. I don't think £5 will ever be reached. Be nice to think of it. Having said that, who's to say that's the upper limit? I just don't know. I think that's half of the beauty about fishing, is the total uncertainty of it all. All we can all be certain of is that we're never going to reach the nth degree in perfection, which would be very nice, of course. They're slowing down a little bit now, these roach, on these tears. It is almost time, I think, for a change of bait, if not tactics. Just heard something fall in the bank up there. Wonder if it's one of them mink that fly about the River Severn these days. Quite a lot of them about, actually. This time last year, just over there it was, to be quite honest, I seen a family of the black mink playing. 2 big ones, family of 2 or 3 little ones, the little babies playing away there. 2 big ones look a bit ferocious, so I'd like to mix with them. Nice one. Oh, he's fell off. Sausages. Not a bad fish, that one, I don't think. Trouble with these roach, when you prick them, they do tend to disperse rather quickly. I don't like losing too many roach. I don't like losing any fish, but especially roach. And the other one is crucian carp. I don't know that. I believe they're members of the same family, roach and carp. And when you lose these fish, they seem to give me the impression they scatter through the shoal, and the shoal flies everywhere, up and down the river and everywhere. Now that's a nice fish. Another nice fish, this one. I think is a little bit fitter. Certainly gives a little bit more welly than the last couple I've had. Yeah, it's a nice fish. Nice fish, this one. Might even be the best of the day. Oh, it is a nice one. It's a nice fish. I'd say 10 or 12 ounces again. It's got that right in the scissors of the jaw, which is a strange thing. I find it with barbless hooks, they do tend to stick occasionally. There we, they're not quite out yet. There we go. Not a bad fish at all. I used to really enjoy watching some of the greater roach anglers, or the guys I call the great roach anglers. Most of them matchmen, and most of them performing at Stourport, which is about 4 or 5 miles up the river there. More of an autumn through the winter, late season venue. And it was nothing up there to see the anglers such as the late Clive Smith, old friend of mine, his buddy Ken Giles, Paul Evans, not a nationally known angler, but certainly one of the nicest stick float anglers I've seen perform. They were nearly all caster fish up there in the middle 70s up to the very early 80s. I used to talk in terms of match weights, anything from 20 to 35 pound. Feeding up Stourport, of course, is of extreme importance because it's a very heavily match fish venue, where a couple of handfuls of M4 casters too much and you blow the shoal apart. Sad to say, I still think it's a dying art, with the predominance of the big feeder catches that are needed to win the matches these days. Another nice fish. Not a big fish, not a big fish. Nice fish. Talking about Stourport, actually, it just gives me thoughts of the river as a whole. There's so many marvellous places on this river. I think I don't like fishing downstream any further than Tewkesbury. Had some nice results there in the matches. 36 pounder bream, 3 barbel once in the winter for, I think it was 16.5 pounds. Then upstream to Ripple, just above Tewkesbury, Bushley opposite. All of them smashing venues. Worcester, of course, it's dominated now by barbel, and that big barbel. But there also, again, a lot of roach pegs go to waste. Holt Fleet, where we are now, upstream to Stourport. What have we got above there? Knoll Sands, Highley, Arley. That was the shallower part of the Severn, where a lot of this green frondweed in the middle. And I often find it strange when not all that long ago, maybe 50 to 80 years, teams of fellas, men, used to pull all the big commercial barges through that lot and across all the fords. Marvellous. I bet they're glad that technology's increased a little bit. Further up the top of the river, Buildwas, that was another marvellous roach area not too many years ago. Probably still is, but there again, not many people fish for them. Further up the river towards Atcham, maybe even up as far as Carsous, the river is greatly affected by the 2 dams, the Clydog Reservoir and Lake Verney. When they started letting the compensation water into the river, they let it from the bottom of the dam. As a consequence, it was very cold, and it was much like trying to mix oil with water. It didn't. I understand that they've changed tactics now, and they don't let it out in 2 huge lumps weekly as they used to. It comes out daily in a steady flow. It's needed to compensate the amount of water that's taken out of the river by the big towns, Gloucester, Worcester, Bewdley, Bridgnorth. But it's coming from the top surface now, so it's not so cold as it used to be. I still think it's got a detrimental effect on the fish, but as I say, not so much as it used to be. But it keeps the river flowing, so I think we can all be grateful for that. Lovely old river, lovely old river. Just hope it don't get spoiled. I'm beginning to think that we do need a change of tactics, although it's important to chase these roach in and out. They might have gone out a couple of yards. Just have another little cast a little bit further out, I think. Give them another handful. Remember once up at Buildwas, and I remember the year as well, it was 1978. I was on a club match, and it was won with 19.5 pound of roach lying on under his rod end in about 16 foot of water, and it was built up slightly his weight by his last fish, which was a bream of 7 pounds, which a lot of people find strange to find big bream that far up the Severn. But if you do catch a bream up there, it is usually above 5 pound. Not shoals of them, just odd fish. From what I remember, he had all those on maggot. No ground bait, no hemp, no nothing. A friend of mine actually called Pete Willis lives in Australia now. Good angler. Now he catches sharks. A bit bigger than this one. I don't think this is a roach. He's hugging the bank. It's a good chance of being a chub, this. Remember once down the Worcester waters on Hemp and Tears, I had about 40 pound of roach, chub I should say. Yeah, he's a chub, gone straight for the end of the keep net. Not a giant as chub go, about 8 ounces I suppose. A lot of these narrow boats coming down the river. Sign of the holiday makers, I suppose. Enjoying themselves. Oh, these tears are getting really bad now. Just had 1 or 2 good ones left in, and they're rather small, I'm sorry to say. But looking at my watch, it's getting towards big roach time. Still bait time, straight lead time. I'm just going to have 3 more chucks down. Oh, I missed. My God, that was a nice bite. One of them burying bites where the float went down about 6 inches. Yeah, they're getting very small, these tears now. I think a lot of bleak are coming into the swim, taking in the loose hemp that I've been throwing in. It's ever so nice, this. I'd like to catch a 6 pound barbel on this pound bottom now, just for laughs. Not impossible to get fish in at that size on these light hook lengths. It's a matter of playing them right, and with a little bit of luck and give or take a snag or 2, you can land them, just a matter of time. Come on, get down. That's just about where it's been going down. Now, give it 1 more chuck. It's noticeable that since that downstream breeze has died, so has the amount of bites I've been having. And I've also noticed the colours dropped out of the water. That flush of rain we had last night, it's passed through now. The river is once again low and clear. A little bit too low and clear for comfort. You can always tell when this river's low, clear and warm, because you get the campers and the holiday makers start jumping off the bridge half a mile upstream. I'm just waiting for the day that one of them missed times jumps off and lands in a boat. Should have quite a few laughs. Nope, I got the heads down. It is time for a change of bait tactics, and I think the still bait's in order. So I'm now going to go on the straight lead. And I think I shall change my bait also. Let's get this little lot sorted out. I think I'm going to start off on caster. I've been throwing one or two that's been mixed up with hemp, not a great deal, but I'll be feeding a little bit more with it. Here we are then. Single caster to a barbless 18 hook. £1.5 hook length, that's between me two hands there. To a £2.5 reel line. There's no need to go any bigger, of course there's no way you're going to put a £2.5 pressure on that rod. The lead, I think it's the equivalent of 1/4 of an ounce. I don't know what the gram size is because I'm not very academic along those lines. There's no shot to encumber the line at all. That's free sliding and it's stopped on the knot of the top loop there. I think with this light form of ledgering, I think a shot there can be a little bit damaging. The rod, it's a 9.5 foot Sunridge rod. Very nice, very fine tip that'll pick out the tiniest of bites. The red on the top is obviously for visual reasons, especially towards this late time of night when it can be a little bit difficult to pick these finicky bites out, especially if you're half blind with glasses like myself. Incidentally, I love this rod because it was the first prize my son won in a match. He won it with 29.5 of crucians, which he caught at the gravel pitch just up the road at Witchbold, all taken on sweet corn incidentally. So I like it. I've caught a few fish on it. I've had a 4.5 barbel on it actually, and a £1.5 bottom, but that's another story for another day. The reel, bail arm type, it's a Ryobi master match, nice reel. It fits its rod nice, balances it out okay. It's in the lock position at the moment. With a big fish I would be back winding as such. That's in a nice handy position there. There's also a preset system on the back when you can preset it to whichever line you're using, but personally, like most matchmen, I prefer to back wind. That roughly then is a setup. I've been throwing 1 or 2 casters in with a hemp during the day, so there's no reason why some fish shouldn't be down there chobbling away at them. I'm fishing on exactly the same line as I've been fishing all day, but I do think it's time for a static bait. With this particular rod, it bounces quite a bit if you hold it all the time, so it's a matter of just setting it down, tensioning the tip into the lead just a little bit, and there we are. That was a bite straight away. It may have only been a bleak, it was a tiny, there we are again. If it goes much more, yeah, I've got it. It's a small fish, probably a bleak or a gudgeon, I would think. It's not, it's a minnow. Nice little, oh it's not, it's a tiny little dace. Beautiful little fish, if you keep still for a minute. Not a scale out of place with him either. Never seen the light of day before, that one. Nice one. There used to be a lot more dace in the river than what there are these days. But there again, I just think it's a case of most people don't fish for them enough. Another great roach angler, of course, is a fellow who spends most of his time on the Avon these days, John Sherwood, who designed the floats I'm using today. A lot of people do tend to forget that John is an ex-Severn champion. He won the Severn Championship, I think, in the early 70s. He had a mixed chub of roach and roach, chub and dace on the day. I don't think it was a time when the barbel were around in any consequence, any great abundance. It took a long time to establish themselves, the barbel did. I'm interrupting myself there, I should have had that bite, that went round and stopped. It's of no value putting great big hooks on when you're missing bites like this. A lot of people do tend to think that if they put a bigger hook on, they'd hook a far bigger percentage of fish. They may well do if they got the bites. But of course the bite ratio does suffer when you go to a bigger hook size. Again, great importance. Keep a regular feeding pattern going all the time. Well, see, these fish can knock off a pint of casters in next to no time, even a bunch of small fish like those tiny dace. That's slightly better. I was right. Oh, we got a little gudgeon. Going down in size, but certainly not quality. Nice little fish. Always remind me of a barbel, these little gudgeon do. And I often think when I've caught one or two of the bigger size gudgeon that I've got a little barbel on, because they do fight quite well for the size. You know, this is not really exciting as regards big fish, but it's smashing. I'm loving it. All these little tiny things. Just shows what species we got in this river. There's everything in here. Oh yes. This is no good, you know, all little tiny dace. In fact, I don't know what it is, behaving rather strangely. So, I was going to say a chub, but I don't think so. I like to be clever, you see. I like to try to tell myself what sort of fish I got on the end before it even comes in. 99% of the time I'm wrong. Has to be a little bit. Oh, it's a perch. Good lord. He's a nice perch. These perch used to provide the culinary delights of some of the old medieval people up and down the River Severn. And I think it's still true to this day that a perch of £1.5 pounds is probably one of the best eatable fish imaginable, including salmon and trout. Nice fish. He's not seen a hook for a long time either. I think I'll stay with the caster just a little bit. It's producing quite a number of bites now. Love to catch one of them double figure barbel, or at least hook one. Keep the bait going all the time. I'm going to mention again the feeding pattern. It's so important with roach fishing. It's probably the biggest thing of it all. With any fishing for that matter. The bait must be enough but not too much and regular. Personally, I don't use maggot a great deal for roach fishing, but a number of anglers do. And I watch them fish and they're doing everything dead right except feeding. Because on this river, even on these gravelly sections, there's still areas where there's this silt. And you can see what happens there. It's soft. It's pure muck. Maggots riddle into it very, very quickly. As soon as they touch it, they disappear. So if they don't get eaten, they just crawl away into the mud. So you've got to keep the steady feed. Casters, it's not too important to worry about that one. Of course, a caster don't crawl, but fish do like them. Ooh, nice bite. I don't like to say what this one, it might be one of those hybrids that the river's full of at the moment. Hybrid is of course a combination of a roach and a bream. You get a mummy bream and a daddy roach and the result is a hybrid. They look like bream, but I know this one's a roach. So they look like bream in shape, but they've got the red tinge of the roach on the fins. They don't grow all that big, I don't think. I think a pound hybrid would be a good one. Nice roach, nice bronzy roach. Beautiful fish. Beautiful fish. Nice fish, probably one of the biggest of the day, that one in actual fact. See if I can catch his granddaddy. I'm still concentrating on putting just the right amount of feed in. Just a half a dozen here and there's enough, I think. Not like winter roach fishing when an half a dozen is enough for 5 minutes sometimes. There's a oft related story attached to Stourport roach. It was Clive Smith in actual fact. He was fishing and he won a particular match with 14 pound on a very bad day. And at one time he was putting in 1 caster per chuck as regards a feeding pattern. Now that's not a great deal, but Clive on the day thought that was enough to keep the roast interested. Certainly was, because I think the next weight to him, if I remember right, was about 4 pound. Hence my reference earlier on to Clive Smith being one of the old masters of roach fishing. Little tickles are these. Some of these are gudging and wouldn't surprise me at all if there's 1 or 2 minnow about either. But winter roach fishing is certainly an art on its own. You don't seem to catch these littler fish actually in the winter when you're doing the applied techniques of roach fishing. You just seem to catch roach, which makes it all nice. That's what it's all about. Well, it's just about to come to the end of the day now. I want to give it a half an hour, no more. Have 2 or 3 chooks using bread flake. I'm going for a big one. It's been noticeable over the past few minutes that 1 or 2 birds are dipping and diving here and there, taking hatching fly off the river. I'm not clever enough to know what type, but I'm sure the birds do. So here we are with the bread flake. I've changed over to a 14 hook in the meantime. It's no use fishing bread on an 18 hook, obviously. So you put the bread flake on a 14 hook, or any size hook for that matter. Just put it down very gently, fold it, squeeze it onto the shank, leaving a tiny parachute just hanging. That's enough for any good roach. Anything bigger, and I think the decent sized roach will become a little bit finicky. So here we go then. I'm going to pass to the same baited area that I've been fishing all day. There's no reason to think that the roach have gone anywhere else. With this type of fishing, I don't strike at this merest flicker of the tip. I wait for the tip to really go round and stay round. It may only go round for an inch, but if it stays round, that means the fish has got the bait in its mouth, and I'll give it one, to coin another phrase. Tonight's method of fishing, it's a waiting game. You don't get so many bites doing using bread flake for a hook bait as you do with casters and tears. But invariably, when you do get a fish, it's a nice sized one. I'm going to give them a few more casters just for see if I can get them chasing around just a little bit. A little bit of a waiting game. Having said that, my tip's just moved. I'm going to wait for this one. That was a definite roach. There he goes. There he goes. Go on, my son. Go on. Now that's got it. That's got it. Oh yes. That is a nice roach. Unless it's a chub. If it's a chub, oh, no, it's not. It's a roach. Yeah, it's pulsing out to the middle of the river. If it would have been a chub, I would. Oh yeah, that is a nice fish. I think he just stopped to have a look at what idiot's caught him then. Got to be careful with this 1.5 pound line. I would think, without looking at him, that's probably the best roach of the day. Oh no, no, I got 1 or 2 like him. Nice fish though. Yeah, that is a nice flake fish. It's bigger than the average fish that I've been catching on the tears and on the caster, which goes to show that this technique of specifically fishing for specimen hunting, if you like, bigger fish on the flake does work. Just try a little bit more while the light's still with us. A little bit of parachute. Not quite happy with that. I'm going to put a bit more on. If it had been a match, I probably wouldn't have bothered. Little parachute again. I don't bother too much if there's a little bit of mud sticking on it, because once it's in the water, of course, that will wash off. And perhaps roach are like mud, I don't know. I certainly like the green algae that's in the middle of the river at this time of the year. It's not unusual to catch these roach and see some greeny black excretia coming out of the vent. That's a sure sign that they've been eating the mossy stuff, sometimes off the sill under the weir, but invariably it's just stuff that grows in the middle of the river at this time of the year, especially if we have a hot summer. I think it's fair to say with roach fishing, and you can make some mistakes, nothing major because you're not going to kill anything, but you can certainly destroy the shoal and disperse them pretty quickly, mainly by overfeeding. Most people spoil a good roach swim in the first 10 seconds of the day out by putting in 2 handfuls of this and a handful of that, and they blew the roach all over the place. It's very much a building method where the shoal has to be built slowly, and shall we say over a 5-hour fishing session you can expect to catch the bulk of the roach within the last 2 hours and possibly nothing in the first hour. Obviously winter fishing differs from summer fishing with roach. I would expect to catch more fish in this particular swim in the winter, and bigger fish also. The swims get hammered obviously a little bit in the summer times. I don't think there's a great deal of difference between a lake roach and a river roach. I think that the lake roach could say to grow bigger, but there again the river roach possibly fight a little bit more, so I don't know where the best part of this day's sport had come from really. I think that lake fishing is possibly a long distance type of fishing, whereas river fishing, more so in the winter than the summer, the roach do tend to cling to the margins because they're not the sort of fish that they've got the energy and the bulk to stop out in the harsh currents in flooded conditions. All in all, roach fishing is an easy method. Change baits do help occasionally, such as I've done tonight, going from the tears to the caster to the bread flake. It's a method that has to be thought of, treated gently, because all in all, the old roach, it's a gentle fish and it needs a gentle approach. I think I've got a bite coming. Yes, it's gone, it's old, and that's a strike. It's a nice fish. I think that this one could be the end of a very, very nice day by being the biggest fish I've caught yet. I've got to take it a little bit gently. I don't think I've got it hooked all that well actually. I would have liked that tip to have gone round just a little bit more. I don't know though, he seems nice. Oh, look at that, look at that. Ain't he just beautiful? Next to a cheque for £1 million, I don't think there's anything that I'd like to see more than that right now. Look at that for a lovely fish. That's beautiful. That's probably the best fish I've had for quite a few weeks in actual fact. I think it's got to be close on £1. Fins perfect, mouth perfect, tail perfect. I've got to give that one another kiss. Well, I think the roach have had enough. I've certainly had enough. I shall now go home to my nearest and dearest. Tomorrow, I've got to plant some cabbages, pick some tomatoes, water my dahlias. If I can get that all done by about 11 o'clock, I shall be down here once again. In a different peg, I think. I think I've hammered this one a little bit today. I've got quite a few fish in the net. Let's have a look at them. And here we are then. Just get rid of 1 or 2 bits and pieces of hardware first. Get those out of the way, the old landing net. Really enjoyed today. It's nice and shallow inside this peg, but the ledge is just out there and I hope that I don't fall over it, because that'd be a tragic end to a lovely day. There you can see just how deep it is. Ah, it's a nice net of fish. That is a nice net of fish. No barbel to get hung up. Really enjoyed catching these today. Here we go, them are nice. Come on little roaches, away you go. There they go, isn't they nice? A beautiful coloured fish, these roach. I think nature done them proud. There we are, perfect end to a perfect day. Well, they've all gone and now I'm gone.